What's the kid's name?
Herbie. Herbert Bittman. Mr. Godwin here is Herbie's grandfather. Mr.
What can he possibly do?
Well, it's in the nature of commentary.
A commentary? How old is the child? 7?
He's 10, Mr. Wellman.
He's 10. A 10-year-old commentator.
Oh, that's really creative, isn't it? That's innovative. What are we shooting for? Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, the darkest hour in the rating wars. And whom are we auditioning for our big gun? A 10-year-old commentator named Herbie?
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John, and I am joined by my co-host, Fred. How are you this week, Fred?
This week.
Just picking up right where we left off.
Yeah, exactly.
18 weeks ago, something like that.
Who was president when we last recorded? I honestly, I'm doing good. This is our first episode of 2019, only a month and a half in, or whatever it is. Yeah. But I'm doing well. It's in case you're just joining us now, first of all, don't listen to this episode, go back. But in case you are, John has 2 kids, and I just had one in the middle of last year. And I feel like having a kid has given me like newfound respect for you pulling off a weekly podcast with 2 kids. Because like the struggle is real. Hashtag the struggle is real. I'm doing well, but I'm a whole lot busier than I used to be.
I mean, it's in there in the record for people who want to go back. I forget. I think we did this for like maybe a year and a half or 2 years with like neither of us having kids. And then, I had the one. And then I don't remember if we were still going through Twilight Zone episodes with the 2. But life gets busy.
Yeah, life gets busy. Suddenly, like, telling your wife, like, hey, honey, I'm going to go into my room for like an hour and a half and watch The Twilight Zone and write about it and then talk to my friend John. It gets a lot less justifiable after 2 kids, or after a kid, I don't know. But I'm overall doing well. Any fun, nerdy, dorky things happening in your life our listeners would care about?
Oh boy, I'm sure that in the course of like the last 7 months before, since our last episode, there were things where I was like, oh, I got to talk about that on the cast, but kind of blanking right now.
The details are kind of starting to come out about Jordan Peele's new updated Twilight Zone relaunch. Oh. I'm not sure that it's that, we sort of have like, there's like cast and episode titles and a vague launch date of sometime in 2019. I'm not sure if anything in that. It was also confirmed that he's the on-air host. That was confirmed. Right. But I don't know. I'm not sure that anything I saw made me go like, "Oh, I'm so excited," or "Oh, that's terrible." It's not like Gilbert Gottfried is a featured player or anything like that.
I'm sure we will check them out. I don't know if we'll be able to deliver our hard-hitting critical analysis on a weekly basis, but
I did see that they're remaking Nightmare at 30,000 Feet with.
I saw that with Adam Scott, right?
Right.
It doesn't occur to me as that choice, but let's see what he can do. I'm not gonna say no, but I probably wouldn't have thought John Lithgow for the movie, but I think he does a pretty good thing. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's something about like Nightmare at 30,000 Feet with like Wi-Fi on a plane. Somehow it just seems like wrong to me, but I don't know. We'll withhold judgment until it comes around. Yeah. But anyway, we have a pressing task at the moment, which is not to talk about the Twilight Zone reboot, but to discuss an episode of
The Night Gallery. Woo!
Not to be remade by Jordan Peele anytime soon.
Actually, that's not true. Well, it's certainly not true, or it is certainly true Jordan Peele isn't going to do it, but I thought I saw an article somewhere saying, like, they're exploring rebooting The Night Gallery, too.
Keegan-Michael Key is going to jump on that.
I think, like, maybe Shudder, like, one of the other, like, a horror-only channel, I think, is looking into that, so... in
yet another
20 years when we get through all those, that's another thing to think about.
Yeah, exactly.
But this week we will be discussing The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes and Miss Lovecraft Sent Me. These are stories from the 2nd season, 1st episode, which aired originally on September 15th, 1971.
You're most welcome in this particular museum. There's no admission, no requirement of membership. Only a strong and abiding belief in the dark at the top of the stairs, or things that go bump in the night. Example, tonight's first painting, Small boy encased in a crystal ball, born with a very special gift. He can prophesy. But you'll wonder, as we look behind that picture, if a prophecy is always a gift, or can it on occasion take the form of a nightmare. The painting's title is The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes. And this is the Night Gallery.
What do you think of the painting?
I did try to study it a little bit, and it might help a bit that I've been so busy that I did all my work late last night, so this is relatively fresh in my head.
In your mind.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah, ominous kid. I did think the star at the top left was trended a little bit more towards cute, like my kid might draw, than like scary, but the rest was good.
It looked a little bit like something like a poster you'd buy, like a really sad head shop, was my take. Yeah, anyway, so now it's time for Who's Better Than Rod? Serling intro. Serling intro. Serling intro. Serling intro. Oh yeah.
I think we've had some good jingles over the years. I'm glad we never like fully committed to jingles, because I feel like our shows would have been twice as long. We definitely could have gone a bit further in the jingle space, which, I think we showed some good restraint.
Yeah, well, they're really fun to make, and like I really get into like, oh yeah, and then I'll do it like this. But then you have to use them. Anyway, that jingle was one of 16 jingles was to announce that it's time for us to do our patented, not that great Serling style intros. I guess I'll go first.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. You're most welcome in this particular museum. There's no admission, no requirement of membership. No shoes and no shirt are required for entry. Sailors and other unsavory types are welcome, and kids who want to pull a Basil Lee Frankweiler are welcome to sleep in the East Wing. Now allow me to direct your attention to a prize painting of a boy, played by Ron Howard's brother. This boy has a very special talent. He can He can see into the future. And what's in your future, you may ask? Why, a mediocre episode of The Night Gallery.
Wait, did Rod mispronounce
I don't know.
that?
I think he said prophesize as opposed to
kinda stumble over it?
prophesize. I mean, I find prophesize a very difficult word to actually say. So maybe that was my own personal read, but I think Rod said prophesize.
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 Okay.
It's very like Daffy
Fair
Duck kind of word.
Gotcha.
Or Sylvester, I guess. Who was the one who was like Suffering Succotash? All right, do yours.
Okay, so this isn't an intro in the traditional sense, because I did this late last night when I was so tired and I just wanted to go to bed. So
It's an intro. Is this just prose poetry or something?
essentially,
This isn't content in the traditional sense.
This is a dramatic performance.
Okay, here we go.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time out of your terribly trying timetables to discuss the new season of America's most esteemed supplier of the spooky, The Night Gallery. Yeah, Rod, actually, here's the thing. We wanted to talk to you about a potential move. A move? To Tuesdays. Tuesdays? To borrow a phrase from our dear droogs down at the docks, are you shitting me? See, we've got this kid Herbie. He's really great. We think he'd fit great in your slot. A kid? Like a family show? No, it's just a kid sitting there, 30 minutes, and he talks. He tells people about books he reads and stuff. You're replacing me with a 10-year-old talking Tolstoy. That's the idea. Does he do anything else? Nope, that's about it. With all due respect, gentlemen, this sounds like a steaming pile of hot garbage. Hey, at least it'll be better than the Lovecraft bit from the last episode. Touché. In the Night Gallery.
I mean, it was fun. Ideally, when you have two characters within the same sketch, they have different voices.
You try.
Kind of sounded like Rod talking to himself or something like that.
I'm sure he had a lot of late nights while he was working on the Night Gallery where he had to talk
ideas around with his, his imaginary friend who talked exactly like him.
Yeah.
But cool. All right, anyway,
It's
so
done.
this is an episode of The Night Gallery. John earlier gave you all the gory details, but check it out if you want to avoid spoilers, because we are about to do that as we go through the plot right now. So, the episode starts backstage at a TV studio in the 70s, and they've booked a hot young guest for the 9 o'clock Wednesday slot.
Wait, slow down. Did you notice just from the very beginning, like the opening shot is like something out of Goodfellas?
You mean
We've
like
got
it's
a
a
very-
long tracking shot?
We've
with
got a
like,
very long tracking shot introducing us to this studio. I mean, I thought it was noticeably impressive from what we've seen of Night Gallery so far. It was like, oh, they got a director to do this one. Cool.
Well, harsh. Harsh but fair. I agree with that, but my thought was also just that it's like a little bit cheating to have your episode set on like a TV studio, because it's like people are going to be there anyway and all the equipment is there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, like, you know, you could see, like, lights that were actually used in the shot maybe is a little cheating. But
Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm impressed with
Yeah.
a long tracking shot, but like when the tracking mechanism is just permanently there, it's a little bit like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like the Copa is a little bit more of an impressive, venue to pull
Sure.
off like a long tracking shot. But yeah, agreed. This episode is, I would say, overall pretty well made, and that's the very beginning of it. So anyway, the long tracking shot introduces a couple different characters. One is this little boy Herbie. We kind of see him at the very beginning, and then cut away to our other main character, a TV executive, and he's being told by an underling that they're going to book this they're going to do like a test taping of a new show that they're going to put on their Wednesday 9 p.m. slot. And the new show is a 10-year-old boy named Herbie, who's just going to kind of like riff on the events of the day.
social mores, it's kind of a Lenny Bruce vibe.
Yeah.
He gets real hot.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I was struck by is that, like, I get it, but this is a very different era of TV. Like, they're all upset that Herbie, like, doesn't offer gravitas and legitimate commentary. Like, I could have been like, now the conversation would be like, can we get someone younger? Like, how many Instagram followers does Herbie have? Like, the concept of just like chucking a young person in front of the camera and seeing what happens is de rigueur in the contemporary TV landscape. But anyway, the TV producer does not like this Herbie concept. And we're sort of getting this three-way convo between him and an underling and Herbie's grandfather, who's kind of like a Grandpa Bucket type of character. One thing I noticed was that the TV exec definitely like speaks fluent Serling. Did you get that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've got one a little bit later, because I
Okay.
think not only does he speak Serling, I think he's one of the better deliverers of it, which we'll get to in a bit. I think I kind of feel bad that this guy didn't get to do more Serling, because I feel like it goes well.
The example that jumped out at me was that, they were saying Herbie has a special talent, and the producer says, I give you this upfront read, a special talent he'd better have. It's just like, wouldn't it have been better just to say he better have a special talent? Like, I don't know.
You gotta pat it all out.
Yeah. So the producer agrees to at least watch this like test taping that they're going to do of the Herbie show. And as I alluded to in my intro, Herbie is played by a very young Clint Howard.
Right.
And this is before, this was
before Clint became Clint. Is that what you're trying to say?
I
Before he
was-
exploded onto the scene.
Exactly. I more meant this is before, like, he was still pretty cute at this age. Like, he didn't have the kind of, like,
I mean, he's not as, and I don't want to dwell on a person's looks
I do.
negatively, but
let's get into it.
I mean, I think he is already a unique looking person. I mean, my thought was, with the story that we're unfolding, like, how pumped was the casting director when Clint walked in?
You mean
They were
you
like,
think he looks
yeah.
weird?
I think so. Maybe I'm like
You're
just
just
carrying
reading
the older
future
Clint
Clint.
baggage.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he has like no neck. His eyes are very intense. For like, I think his forehead is already kind of taking form. Like, he's not as odd looking as he will become, but I think he's already a stranger looking child than young Ron.
I don't know. I thought he kind of looked just like an average, like, kind of cute
maybe-
little blonde kid in sort of like a young Republican suit. Like, I don't know.
I could be projecting. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely got the feel that they like asked Ron first. I mean, all due respect to Clint. But anyway, that's who the little boy is, and it's Herbie. And at first, his show is kind of boring.
Hello, my name is Herbert Bittman. I've been reading a very interesting book. It's called The Count of Monte Cristo. I feel that anybody might enjoy it. I've also begun a book on astronomy written by a man named Duncan. Reading this book has made me want a telescope. My grandfather says that if I work hard and get good grades in school, I can have a small telescope at the end of the semester.
That's what we're going to need to find you, you know, Reed. After I kick you out of here. A telescope.
Nice. Slam.
About 15 minutes from now, Gwendolyn Box, that little girl who's been lost in the Sierra since Thursday, will be found. Her leg is broken, but she'll still be alive. After I get my telescope, I want to become a member of the Society of Variable Star Observers.
So the beginning of Herbie's little show is kind of like cable access, like kids take over the news type of show. But then he has this sort of not exactly ominous, but sort of like a spooky prediction about this lost girl, Gwendolyn Box. Let me just toss this out there. Gwendolyn Box as a name. Did it sound to you kind of like something from Willy Wonka? Like, Gwendolyn Box had brunette locks and fell into some sugar or something like that.
It's a strange name.
Yes, for reasons that could potentially be very juvenile if I wanted to go down that road. But also, it's just a weird name. One thing I also thought was funny is that little Herbie's reading The Count of Monte Cristo at age 10. Is that really age-appropriate reading?
I mean, I think we're supposed to take it that he is an odd duck. You know, I don't know the ins and outs plot-wise of Count of Monte Cristo and why it might be problematic for a 10-year-old or whatever, but, you know.
Well, it's not like sexually explicit exactly, but it is like, I don't know. It's also like 1,000 pages long. Like, it's a real...
That's my only real knowledge of it is that it's very...
I mean, I definitely didn't read it at 10. I struggled to get through it at like 20, so... I mean, I didn't struggle to get through it. Also, this conversation is boring. Anyway, moving along.
I love that you had to hedge for our podcast audience. You're like, no. I mean, I got it. It was not hard to read for me. I'm smart.
No, it's compulsively readable. It's a very like plot heavy, fun like thriller type novel. And I'm smart. Anyway, let's continue.
You're really piling on. It went from like it was pretty hard to read to oh my god, it was one of the best things I've ever read.
No, okay. It was hard to read in length. Like it was eating a really big, delicious cake. It's an effort, an energy, but it's a delicious cake.
Okay.
Gwendolyn Box. Moving along, Herbie at the end of this little spiel also predicts an earthquake. What did you think of like the way that they chose to convey Herbie has a prediction? Like, because at least in this first prediction, it's almost like he doesn't seem aware that he's giving it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like that's just down to the child actor. Like, I think the concept was really good.
Yeah.
And I do think it was like weird and ominous. I feel like, you know, maybe a slightly better child actor could like pull it off even more. But I do like this like, I don't know, dead zone like weird feel of like, he's barely aware that it's happening. He's just like in the middle of his train of thought.
Yeah, I thought the first one they did pretty well. Like he just says it out loud and then moves back onto his, scathing review of The Count of Monte Cristo. Which is compulsively readable, but quite shallow. But in later ones, they're like, all right, here's my prediction. I don't know. I
wish they'd kept it up. But
anyway, so at the end of this, the producer dude hated the show because he obviously doesn't believe the predictions are real. And he has a lot to say about it.
A 10-year-old myopic who sits on pillows and tells fright stories. Gwendolyn Box is going to be found in the Sierras with her leg broken. Los Angeles is going to have an earthquake tomorrow morning.
You should give the boy a chance, Mr. Wellman.
I should also contract pleurisy and fall down an elevator shaft.
No, Mr. Wellman, please be reasonable.
Did you catch that show, Mr. Wellman?
I caught it. I'm throwing it back. I want that tape wiped. Kid, I don't know who put you up to this, but we are not amused. Do you understand that?
Just a moment, Mr. Wellman. Nobody put Herbie up to anything. He has a special talent, a gift, if you will. It was his own idea to share it.
You share it, Grandpa. Buy yourself a wagon and take it on the road. But right here, in this station, I'm not interested in his gifts, his talent, or anything else. If you can't wipe that tape, burn it. All I want left of the Herbie Bittman show is a fading echo and a receding memory.
I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good delivery of Serling dialogue.
Yeah. a fading echo and a receding memory. That is, it's pretty coming thick and fast. And I also noticed that his name is Wellman. Wasn't there that like
Manly?
Exactly.
Manly Wade Wellman.
Manly, well-made manman. Anyway, so he orders the tapes to be dispatched with.
Not unlike Nixon.
Nice.
Topical.
Wellman Gate. Herbie Gate. Anyway. So
Not that that's in any way relevant to anything happening today. Go on.
Anyway, so the producer is alone in the theater in the next scene, watching an old movie, which I did do the deep dive into, and I found it's the Island of Lost Souls, which I believe is just like an Island of Dr. Moreau. Either a type movie, or was Island of Dr. Moreau originally a novel and this was an adaptation? Or?
Yeah, it was either a novel or a short story.
Okay.
When I saw it, I thought it was just Island of Dr. Moreau, but I guess, in fact, the movie was called Island of Lost Souls.
Yeah, it's like a 30s or 40s, like a very early adaptation
30s,
of it.
yeah.
Marlon Brando was nowhere to be seen, thankfully.
I thought about that, and I thought, like, it's a shame because it was a novel, and, they did it then, and they could do it another time, but, like, that piece of IP is just absolutely destroyed for me. Like, I can't not see Marlon Brando and his strange little friend and his like ice bucket hat whenever you say the words Dr. Moreau. They just destroyed it.
He killed it. It's dead. The producer's watching, and you have an extended cut from this movie, and it's like kind of spooky, and like it's the scene where all the men who've become beasts are like, "You've made me into a beast." And watching it, I was like, "Oh, that's cool. I bet that's gonna play into the plot somehow." And then, like at the end of the episode, I was like, "Oh, it didn't." Like, why did they?
There's some small part of me that kind of appreciates that, because it's like, isn't that what you would? What you're describing is what everyone would do.
Right.
Like, it's like in a movie, like a horror movie in high school, the teacher's always got like a book reading that's thematically relevant. Here it's just like, of course, like the Moreau thing is going to have some basis in the rest of the episode. No.
Yeah, but the thing is,
just when he was checking out.
It's like long. The clip is long. They don't just show him watching it. They
why
show
is
like
he
a
watching
scene.
it? Is he just like, I'm screening what we're going to show for the like Friday night horror thriller?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Why does he need to make that call?
I know. This guy just
like, leave it to the guy dressed like Dracula. You're fine, Wellman. Like, you're a micromanager.
I know. He's all alone in the theater, too. It's really weird. It's like, I'm a high-powered TV executive. I'm going to spend 2 hours of my day watching this old horror movie just to make sure. I want to screen it at 1 a.m. on Friday. It's bizarre. I don't know. I was like, oh, so is he saying that like we're all kind of lost souls and Herbie is... No, not really.
No.
So he's interrupted from this non sequitur screening by a news bulletin brought in his secretary or somebody wants him to take a look at the news. So they patch the news through to the theater. And apparently,
what do they have, like a 16 millimeter of the news? Well, I guess they probably did back then. So.
Yeah, could they do that? Like,
Shame on me.
How would that work?
I mean, the news back then would have been shot on film, so I guess, they would have I don't know how they would move a broadcast. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I guess someone made a copy of the 16 millimeter print and ran it over to the theater. Well, wait, no, they're at the TV studio, so maybe they were just like showing what they were going to show a little later that day. I don't know.
Like, it's not like a TV screen that he's watching. It's a projection, right?
Right, but the news back then was shot on film,
Okay,
too.
so somebody ran over the reel.
Yeah, this in the extended cut. They explain all these.
You get like a really long tracking shot of like a little like intern running it over. Anyway, I don't know why we're talking about this, but anyway, so apparently one of Herbie's predictions has come true. They have found the young Miss Box. She was lost in the Sierras, but she's been found, and just like Herbie said, she had a broken leg. And did you find it odd that the news report was like essentially shot from her perspective? It was like Walter Cronkite's like, I'm here with Gwendolyn now, and the helicopter's just coming down. I'm like, well, how do you have a camera looking up at the helicopter if she's only now just being found? Whatever.
I don't know.
We've done a pretty deep dive on this news report.
Yeah, I think this is well covered territory. And if you go through any of the literature on this episode, you're going to get a lot of similar analysis.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was interesting, and the producer is like, well, we'll just wait and find out if there's an earthquake tomorrow, because that will certainly prove Herbie all the way right. Kind of cool. We don't just jump to the next day, we jump to a year later, and we see the newspaper shot, but it's like a part of, a collection of newspaper clippings that the producer has collected to demonstrate like how great Herbie has done in the past year. So the TV producer is showing off like all of the Herbie show stuff. Did they ever see the title of the show, by the way?
No.
I wonder what
What
would you call that if you were a TV producer and you had a kid who could predict the future?
God, I definitely want alliteration, but what is the like Herbie's
Yeah.
Herbie's home run
home? Yeah. But yeah, it's just like a little bit weird because it's like the show is almost like a public service type thing, almost in a way. So it would feel weird to call it like, Future Shock or something like that. So yeah, the TV exec is showing off the Herbie show to university professor. They never say what university either.
Yeah,
just
research professor.
The university. I don't know. It's like they gave it like a solid year and a half of completely accurate predictions, and it's like, now we're gonna send a TA over to talk to the kid. Like,
exactly. I mean, that was kind of a big question, and I don't know if it's like general discussion, but like, I thought realistically, what would have happened in 18 months if every prediction this kid said was true? Like, I feel like the government would have had him in, in a padded cell. Yeah. Like,
he would be dead or like in the Pentagon. That's it.
Yeah, like world nations would be sending people trying to like, kill his family to obtain him to be able to use
Yeah, exactly. Just him going down to the local cable station to film his show and talk to a professor.
And like I don't think payment hasn't really factored into this yet. Like you're still like, maybe we'll buy him a telescope at some point. It's like, are you shitting me?
Good point. Touche. They're treating it like kind of like he's like a particularly successful carny act or something like that.
Well, that's kind of it's the model. It's the like what's that guy from the Ed Wood movies? Is it Criswell?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of acting like, oh, it's this cute, TV sideshow. I don't know, but it's like, but every single thing he says is right.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, like the concept of him just like kind of like playfully appearing on Carson is not really. I don't see that happen.
Right, he's not like, I see an Oscar in Sandra Bullock's future sometime in the next few years.
Like we're talking earthquakes here.
Right.
Anyway. So the professor interviews Herbie and gets like a little tidbit out of him. Apparently he can...
We need this for any good monster. We need to know the rules. So here we go.
Do you have any idea how this works?
You mean my being able to predict things?
Yes.
It just sort of happens.
Do you get a vision?
You mean like pictures?
Mm-hmm.
No. It isn't pictures and it isn't words. Just sort of comes into my mind. One thing I've noticed is I can't predict anything unless I more or less know what it is. I could predict an earthquake because everybody knows what a quake is. And when somebody's missing and I predict they're going to be found, if I hadn't known they were missing, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
I see. Well, then you're not able to predict anything that isn't already in your consciousness.
That's the reason why I read so many books. The more things I know about, the more things I can predict.
What, is he going to predict the ending of Monte Cristo or something?
Yeah,
like
so
that?
why did you read Count of Monte Cristo, Fred? I get why he read it, but you just wanted podcast points.
But is he going to predict? He's like, I'm going to predict the literary reputation of Alexander Dumas. Like, I'm going to predict its twists and turns over the next 48 hours. We also learned that Herbie is being watched by the United States government in the form of some random, like, just old lady, like, in the corner. Like,
yeah,
the fact that there's
US
not 10
government
guys
is
with
basically like
machine
the
guns.
censor. Their standards and practices. That's the only interest they have in this.
Yeah.
They're like, in case he goes a little too far off the reservation about our policy. What the hell? You've got a kid who can predict the future.
Yeah, I know. It was like they're worried if he's... Like, that was a classic, like, Serling, like, like adult of the 60s type thing where they're like, if he says anything un-American, there's somebody to step in. It's like, that's not the issue here. Like, he's not going to say, like, communism's not so bad. You need to think about this more clearly. Call the Rand Corporation.
Right.
So Herbie is going to make his prediction, but they sit him down in the chair, and apparently he's having second thoughts. He's not feeling too well, and he, instead of doing a show, he wants to go home. Right. And, you know, the producer's being awfully hard on him for a kid who can see the future and probably isn't locked down into any particular kind of contract because he's a minor. Right. Like, he's being a real, like, hard ass with Herbie, and I'm like, just let the kid go home.
Oh, I had the same note. I mean, I get for, like, narrative thrust, you need to, like, make this be the thing, but, like, good God, this kid's been doing it 18 months, never wrong, and he's like, I don't feel like it today. They're like, Herbie, get your ass out there. People need you. He's like, well, give him a day off. What the hell?
I know. And then they're like, Herbie, we'll let you take a 2-week vacation. We'll pay for it.
It's like, wait, have you not been paying the kid who can tell the future? Like, what is going on?
The kid just is a really bad agent, basically.
Yeah, Grandpa Agent is blowing it.
He insisted on his grandpa being his sole Hollywood representation, and Grandpa is just like sucking up all the profits on his weird little,
that's the untold
habits.
Story here.
Yeah. Anyway, so Herbie eventually does cave and do the show, and he, does his little book report type thing, and he finally does get to a prediction, but it's a little bit different than the average Herbie prediction.
Tomorrow is going to be different from anything in the past. Tomorrow is going to be a start of a new and better world for all of us. In the past, we've had a pretty bad time. We've had wars and famines and pestilence. We've had depressions, and nobody seems to know what causes them. People have starved when there was food. They have died of diseases when there was cures for them. We've seen the water and the air and everything else get polluted. And we've seen so much hatred. Well, beginning tomorrow, all of that's going to be changed.
Has sort of like a semi-biblical tone to him, to the prediction. He's like, there's going to be a garden, and people are going to get along. Like, did it not have sort of a biblical resonance to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, compared to his just the facts, ma'am, earlier predictions, it's much more flowery and aphorisms, etc.
So yeah, it's definitely like a little bit more of like a poetic, vague prediction.
Right.
And when we cut away from that, it appears to be having some kind of effect on the population. Like,
it's giving them a nice orange tint.
Yes, exactly. It's like we cut, and it's like these shots of like, yellow city streets, and you hear people yelling and space noises. And I had a really hard time like telling, is like, are people really happy or are they angry? Like, it just kind of felt like the intro to Koyaanisqatsi or something like that. It was like not totally clear to me like what was going on.
I have to assume that people were like basically just out humming in, joyous expectation, anticipation, but I would not say that's in any way clear from the visual or sound that I'm giving. I'm kind of just putting that together from what I've just seen. I don't. It makes it seem like nuclear winter or fallout has already started for the weird like tint they put on everything. I don't know why they did that, or maybe it's just the 70s and they were just like, just take the camera outside, and that's just how LA looked then. I don't know.
The 70s were a mustard-colored decade in general. I think it's just kind of like artsiness that doesn't clearly convey what's going on.
Yeah.
But anyway, we soon join Herbie and his grandpa and the professor up in Herbie's weird, like, hyper-modernist appointed apartment. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting in his bedroom looking directly into the sun as it sets. And the professor is there, and she has kind of like a weird little quibble with Herbie's prediction about the rapturous joy of tomorrow. She basically says, like, but Herbie, you're only supposed to be able to predict 48 hours into the future, which I don't think is something we heard on camera, but okay, fine. And she was like, how could you predict that Earth would enter like a new age of joy or something? Like, so that was like a clue that obviously Herbie was kind of like BSing a little bit. Basically.
Yeah, Herbie's, it's all coming out. The whole scam is falling apart.
think it's better this way, Doctor. I wanted them to be happy. So that's why I lied to them.
Herbie, what is it? What's going to happen tomorrow?
Tomorrow, the sun.
Yes? What?
I forget the word. It's what they call it when a star flares up. It becomes 1 billion times hotter than it was before.
A nova?
That's right, a nova.
What does that mean?
That's when the sun explodes.
I just love her very professorial academic take. That's when the sun goes kablooey.
No, I mean, that was very much for the audience. They were like, we think about 25% of the people are going to get the twist back at the Nova line, but we got to bring it home for the rest of the people.
So anyway, that's a bummer. We actually don't really get much more. We pretty much just cut to like live footage from the surface of the sun. And indeed, it seems little Herbie was dead on the money. The sun does go nova, and
It's pretty damn bleak.
Yeah, it is.
This is one of the, I feel like one of the bleaker things we've watched on this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of like any other episode where everyone dies on Earth. Their little music cue in there kind of reminded me how this is sort of has shades of the Midnight Sun in it, just in the sense that like, you know, the sun will cause the Earth's destruction, and it is a pretty bleak ending in that one as well. But even in that one, it wasn't quite as explicit as like, yeah, we're all going to die.
And I mean, it all being told, I wouldn't say from the perspective of a child, but with a child like having the weight of all of this on them, like this is a pretty damn bleak episode compared to. I don't know. How did you feel about it with the reveal?
I thought it was cool that it was bleak and dark, and it has like a nice tone of dread, especially because they've built up this cherubic kid personality, so there's like a nice juxtaposition there. But I guess I didn't love the fact that Herbie's prediction almost kind of had nothing to do with it to some degree. You know what I mean? Like normally in an episode where like, you know, someone can predict the future and portend something ominous happening, that kind of like affects the plot. Like the kid predicts the death of the professor and that freaks her out and she does something, you know, or whatever.
Right.
It's a little bit different when it's just like, and yeah, the world explodes at the end, you know? It's like, I don't know. I felt like it was nicely bleak, but a little bit like empty almost.
I would say maybe to like make it have more resonance, I think they kind of failed the reaction to his positive announcement. As much as we've said, it's like hard to read what the hell they're even trying to show. Like if we'd had a little bit more time to live in that world where you could see like the whole world is rapturous and like excited on a brand new day, and like you can already see like, I don't know, the United Nations is like taking steps and like, oh my God, we might be about to like turn this corner based on everyone believing that this little kid, you know, it's going to happen because he said it's going to happen, and then it looks like steps are actually being taken that are going to make it happen anyway, and then, oh wait, no, it's all going to blow up. That might give it a little bit more resonance instead of just like an orange filter on the camera, but...
No, I think that orange filter conveyed a lot, John.
Well, just one thing to kind of to circle back to a point you made when they're talking about the rules, and he says something about that's why I try and read so many books. That is actually laid in beforehand. He talks about like, I've just started reading a book about astronomy, and my dad says I might get a telescope. And then at the very end, he says this is why he knew about it, because he'd read that book on astronomy, and he read about supernovas, and as soon as he was aware of them, he was able to have the vision of the supernova that was about to happen. And there's actually a part where he's explaining what actually happened, and he says basically like, yeah, I never would have known about what was happening, but then I read this book. And because he'd only talked about like this wonderful revelation, I still wasn't aware that we were getting that twist, and I was really worried that they were going to pan down and he was going to be holding the Bible and like the twist was like Jesus was coming. I was like, are they really about okay, no.
And guess what? He's an alien. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got that as well, but I found that a little like, I don't know. Like, he's like, I knew there was an earthquake coming because everybody knows about quakes. It's like he didn't like study to be like a seismologist. So why does he have to read a book about astrophysics to know the sun's gonna blow up? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
he knows
I guess
what
it's
the
like
sun
he knew
is.
about the exactly. Yeah, I guess he knew of suns before. So
I don't know. I mean, I agree that was like slightly clever layering.
Or at least, it had the intention of layering. Maybe it wasn't as clever, but
I just feel like they set up this like interesting scenario where there's like a kid who has a TV show can predict the future, and what would that mean? And at the end of the day, it was just like, let's just wipe the slate clean and blow up the Earth. Like, it's not. There's nothing particularly ironic about the Earth blowing up. How does that reflect on the first half of the episode, or the first 90% of the episode?
I think the irony would have been developed if if he predicts everything's going to be great, and you see the world starting, oh my god, the world is shifting and it's going to be great, all because this kid said it, and then at the very end it's like, oh no, he was not only was he lying, but he was lying to hide that it's all about to blow up. It's just we didn't really get that middle step.
Yeah, I agree. That orange filter was not the right choice.
Not up to the task
for that beat.
I will say this is one of the few episodes where I did the homework and I read the short story last night.
Nice.
Because it's only 6 pages.
There we go.
It's
hardly the Count of Monte Cristo, John. Did I mention that's over 1,000 pages and that I've read it? And that I found it to be like a cake, a delicious cake. Sorry, go on.
So it was fine. It's interesting because there are large chunks of dialogue that are taken directly from the short story and pasted in there. Basically, like the interactions with the research scientist explaining it, and the research scientist in Wellman. Those are pretty verbatim. Like, you can kind of. It's just interesting. Like, when the prose in this episode is not extremely purple, that's probably just ripped straight from the book.
Yeah.
As soon as it turns purple, there's Serling. Like, you can kind of see the two getting smushed together.
Is that period of like, oh, everyone thinks everything's going to be great, more clearly painted?
No, it's all like, it's the same thing of he makes the prediction, they basically have to like escape the studio to get him back to a hotel room because like everyone wants to swarm him, but it's not very clear what's going on in the world. And
in the short story, it's like, and suddenly everything looked really orange.
Yeah, the one other thing is the short story weirdly telegraphs it a little too much. Like, I think at some point in the first page or two, they're like, oh, like he could predict the end of the world or something like that, and then like a page before the final reveal, the research scientist ends up talking to, for some reason they talk to a like astrophysicist or something, and the person's like, yeah, I don't know, it's not like a nova or something. And then like a page later, like, it's a nova. It's like, well, what?
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know.
So,
I just can't get over the fact that it's like a little cheaty to like blow up the world especially if like there's nothing the characters can conceivably do about it. I don't know. Anyway, so on the note of the destruction of the entire world and everything we know and love and hold dear, let's move on to a Playboy cartoon of an episode called Miss Lovecraft Sent Me. Do we have any clips to set this bad baby up?
We do not have a single clip from this. I mean, it's only like a minute or two long, but it was not clip worthy.
It's this night gallery. It's the part of night gallery that people don't really talk about. They talk about the 25-minute parts, but they're just like peppered with these weird, seemingly high-budget little things that they do that are all just stupid monster jokes. And this one, let's just get through it. But we hear some knocking on the door of a mansion. And then Dracula comes down to answer the door. And guess what, John? It's a blonde teeny bopper who's there to babysit for Dracula. Isn't that?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've said this and you said it before. Like, as soon as I saw the like blonde babysitter, I was like, okay, Playboy cartoon joke, great, got it, okay. Yeah. And like it even disappointed from there. But yeah.
Did you know she has like a weird little portable radio so you hear her music playing? Did you? I wish we did have a clip because it's just like, hey, it's a fun 60s scene type music. Like, it's like the music that like was that interstitial music they use in Austin Powers, Right. Just really 60s garbage.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she was sent by the Lovecraft agency, and we get she's like kind of walking in, wandering on through Dracula's living room as he's telling her about his kid, and we get this. I guess it's technically a reveal where she's looking in a mirror and she can't see him, but it's sort of like, if you see a vampire, do you learn anything new by looking in a mirror and not seeing the vampire?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, he's not dressed in civilian clothes. Yeah. He looks like a guy going to a Halloween party. He is dressed head to toe like a vampire.
He also has fangs.
Oh. Yeah, which is like the cartoonish aspect of this.
Yeah.
But it's just keep moving.
Yeah, anyway, so Dracula goes upstairs to, like, get his kid ready for babysitting. And the teeny bopper babysitter's looking at, like, book titles because she was like, maybe I'll read him to sleep. And the book titles suggest very strongly that the person who is obviously Dracula may in fact be Dracula. Like, it's just like a guide to Satan or whatever. And then she hears some sort of growling from upstairs, so obviously Dracula's kid is no ordinary baby. And she takes a hint and runs away. And then Dracula comes down and is like, what did I do? And
there's like not even a punchline.
Yeah.
It's just like she runs away. It just kind of ends with like, sorry, folks.
Yeah, well, like, the funny thing is, it hard cuts to Serling, and there's like an awkward pause because they didn't edit it that well before he starts talking, and he just does this sort of like hangdog expression on his face. Where he's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, on to the next.
Yeah, I mean, the other horrible ones at least had like a clear punchline. I don't know.
Yeah, this one was just like,
dumb.
Here's the situation.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was like a scenario, but there wasn't a gag at the end.
Yeah,
I don't know. It was like,
I don't know. Did you watch the other one just for fun, the one with Leslie Nielsen?
When I heard it was Leslie Nielsen, I thought about it, but I was very tired, so I intend to go back. So don't spoil it for me.
Okay, it's a little better than this, and it also has Leslie
I assume
Nielsen.
he breaks out the fart machine.
Yeah.
So.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Scott, Siegfried, Mark Grams Jr., Siegfried and Grams, and IMDB.
All right, a little bit of trivia. For the introductory painting used for The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, artist Thomas J. Wright used his own child as the model for the painting.
Okay. Did painting really need a model? It's just like a generic...
Yeah, I mean, he probably just had a photo of his kid and he's like, good enough.
Yeah.
Get this done. Supposedly, the earthquake predicted by Herbie Bittman was the Sylmar. Is that how you pronounce that?
How do you say it?
Sylmar, Sylmar earthquake, which took place in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains in Southern California at 6 o'clock and 41 seconds a.m. on February 9th, 1971.
Huh.
It lasted 12 seconds and had a magnitude of between 6.5 and 6.7 on the Richter scale. Where were you on that one, IMDb? Let's narrow it down. 64 people were killed and approximately 2,000 were injured. That's pretty intense.
It's kind of weird that they would sort of glibly toss that as a reference.
Yeah, it's kind of like when New Nightmare brought in like a major LA earthquake as a plot point. But anyways, bios. Did you have any trivia for it?
No.
Yeah. Michael Constantine played Wellman. He was in the Twilight Zone episode "I Am the Night, Color Me Black."
Oh, who was he?
I didn't write it down because I was in a rush. He might have been a guard, maybe.
Yeah,
like a guard at the police station. He played Gus in My Big Fat Greek Wedding canon, both movies and the television show. And he was Big John in the movie The Hustler. Clint Howard played Herbie Bittman. Ron, his brother, was in Walking Distance, so that's something. He's had a very prolific career in like lots of B and C movies. I guess, he's probably like maybe best known from Apollo 13 as like one of the guys on the ground trying to get them all home. But
Yeah.
I know him from Rock and Roll High School, maybe
Yeah.
best. But I don't know.
He has a
What's your
weird
Clint
career. I mean,
Howard?
He very much just is Ron Howard's weird-looking brother. Like, that's just like, that's his career, you know? So my favorite Clint Howard cameo is actually in That Thing You Do. He plays
Oh, I've
like
actually
a
never
DJ.
seen that. Do
you remember that?
It's like, no, that's like one of my gaps. I've never seen it.
Oh, really? Oh, it's really fun. I think you'd like that movie.
Yeah.
It's just like a feel-good movie.
I just watched The Commitments in the past year. I'm behind on this stuff.
Oh, that's a
like,
great one too.
Yeah, I read the book. I enjoyed it. I read the entire 150-page
wow.
book. It was
Wow.
It was
that
and it was
also
a
written by
delight.
Alexander Dumas.
Clint Howard's dad, Rance Howard, plays a cameraman at some point. Rance is another guy. He's passed on now, but he had a extraordinarily prolific career that you might not have noticed happened. Written by Serling, short story by Margaret St. Clair. If you Google The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes story, you can find it if you want to read it. Directed by John Badham. He did 6 Night Gallery episodes. His sister Mary Badham played Sport in The Bewitching Pool. He directed... Yep.
Wait, so his sister was an actor in The Twilight Zone. That's interesting.
That's
right. Probably a young guy.
Well, yeah, his sister was the kid actor who played Sport, so
Right.
he would have been young at this point, probably, I don't know,
well, like
20, maybe like late 20s, early 30s, maybe
Yeah.
she was a little younger. Probably is most famous for directing Saturday Night Fever, but he also directed War Games, a movie I really like. So
Exactly. We all know which is the true classic of those two.
if we jump down to Miss Lovecraft Sent Me, Joseph Campanella played quote-unquote father, or, the vampire. He was also in a Night Gallery episode called The Night of the Enemy, or segment anyway. Sue Lyon played the babysitter. She was the title character in Lolita, so that's
interesting.
Kind of an interesting, sad get for that role. Written by Jack Laird, who worked on a bunch of Night Galleries, directed by Gene Kearney. We talked about him in House with the Ghost, or House with Ghost, and that brings us to the...
Inevitable.
I feel like I stepped on you. Did you have Gene Kearney stuff?
No, it's just funny to think of that episode having been written. It's like kind of like, shouldn't it say like bantered by Gene Kearney or something like that, or dashed off by Gene Kearney?
Right. Okay, so Joseph Campanella was in a movie called Hangar 18, which they discussed in the KTMA days. He was also had I think maybe an audio-only role, voiceover role in a movie called Silent Running from the 70s, which was a big inspiration for Mystery Science Theater. And then Sue Lyon was in a movie called Astral Factor, which the MST3K spin-off Cinematic Titanic once did.
I remember Cinematic Titanic. Oh, that feels like so long ago.
Yeah, I was a fan. I thought they did some very good work.
Yeah.
IMDb gives this episode a 7.4. Fred, what'd you think?
I thought it was probably my favorite, I think, of the Night Galleries we've discussed. Even though I did feel, well, I don't know. Again, it's only the Boy Who Predicted Earthquake segment I'm talking about here. I thought it was a little bit of a cheat to blow the world up, but other than that, I liked it a lot. I thought it was like well made, got a nice creepy tone. I would say like a 7+ or something, maybe a 7, probably 7. How about you?
Yeah, I'm probably just rusty or something, because I agree. I think it's the best thing I've seen on the Night Gallery so far. So I was like thinking, should I give this like a 9 or something? I don't know. I mean, like, I can't give it a 10. I don't think it's. I think a 9 is probably an exaggeration too. Like I do think this is better directing than we've seen. I think the ending was like effective, but I do think the story I think Serling padded the story out in the wrong directions.
Yeah.
Like, he had to pad out the short story, and he decided to, fill it up with more about casting and, the machinations of the TV show.
Yeah,
which
there is a lot
probably
of
was a
stuff.
lot cheaper to do, but,
Yeah.
was not where the narrative, interesting stuff could have been developed.
I know, there's kind of like a sort of leitmotif of, how corrupt the TV industry is or whatever. And
I'm probably still being overly kind just because it's been a while, but I'll go ahead and say, 8. How about an 8?
All right.
You can have an 8.
I'll give it a solid 7, and I'll feel good about it. Maybe someday we'll go back and watch that Leslie Nielsen sketch and bring it down to a 5. Anyway, that wraps it up for The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes, and Miss Lovecraft sent me. Somebody actually did request this, and I'm giving them the shaft by not saying who it was. Do you remember?
This episode was requested by friend of the cast, Philip. It was also, I would say, requested by another friend, Douglas. So thank you both for that request.
Thank you, guys. And also thanks to the listener who...
And it only took us a couple years to get to those,
Yeah.
so...
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your patience, too. I'm
listener
sure
also-
you're long gone, unsubscribed, but there you go.
A listener also did a really funny supercut of all the times that a Twilight Zone character has ever jumped out a window, and that was a real treat in our inbox. I think that was Roberta who sent that in, so thanks very much. You can request an episode too. How can people get in touch with us, John?
You could send us an email, which is the preferred way if you want to request an episode at Twilight Pwn, pwn@gmail.com. If you just want to, yell at us or make fun of us or whatever, you can go over to Twitter at Twilight Pwn. You can check out our Facebook page. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. And if you're, you can find us in any kind of podcatcher app. If you're over in iTunes, if you want to leave us a rating or review, we still appreciate those. Since our last episode, we got a couple, so shout out to Shell and Ang, Austin Giori, and Gene Everett 187. So appreciate them. Keep them coming. Like them. We're almost to 200 reviews or ratings. So yeah, 4 more people. Come on.
Come on.
You get that, and we get the prize ham.
Cool. So I'll let you go in a second, but John, have you ever made like a prediction that you remember as being notably successful or impactful?
No. I'm trying to think. I don't think that's really a thing I would do. Other than I think my team is going to win a Super Bowl. I can't think of anything like that. Well, no, without getting political, which we've made tiny efforts to steer clear from. I don't think I have anything that I really could say. Do you have something worthwhile in there?
No, which makes me regret asking the question because I don't have an answer for it. Again, it all comes down to, the average prediction most people make is just my team's gonna win. So
right.
So I don't know that I have anything any more interesting than that. But if listeners want to write in with their own successful predictions, we'll get to them in the next quarter. So please shout us out and bring receipts if your prediction was successful. All right.
Exactly.
Well, I will talk to you soon, John.
All right. Talk to you later, Fred.
Bye. So in the next scene, they
bring in his secretary, and it turns out she never could have scrubbed the tapes the way he describes. Deep cut and Watergate stuff.
That one went over my head. Anyway, are you reading a 12-part Watergate book or something?
I read a pretty deep dive 2 years ago. I think that was one of the beats along the way is they'd said tapes were inadvertently destroyed based on the secretary screwed up, and then they brought the secretary in, and she didn't know how to redo what would have been the screw up to make them break.
I
so
see.
It was this was all made up. So anywho, the unintentional deletion part was made up. So
got it.
The more you know.
Yep.
Not that that's in any way relevant to anything happening today. Go on.